Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jim. Jim, isn't this where you say something smart alecky or funny?
Yeah, usually, except one of these something funny and smart aleckies from a few episodes ago seems to be coming true.
Oh.
And greetings once again, and welcome to another episode of Two Guys Talking About Records of Vinyl Community Podcast. I'm Jim, and I'm a record store owner.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
And yeah, so usually I try to be funny, but this one's a little weird. It's something that we talked about literally several episodes ago, and I made a joke about it. I think we made a joke or two about it, and now it seems that if that's not a joke anymore, and we'll explain on that coming up here in a little bit. But how was your week, sir?
My week was fantastic.
Did you find a wagon and get back on? Or?
Yeah. No, well, this stuff's still kind of coming in from when I fell off the wagon. You know, there's certain things. Don't sit in hotel rooms after a drink or so and get on Discogs. That's bad. Or Amazon. Don't do that. It just keeps coming. But hey, I did have some neat stuff, and some of this was actually some of the people that watch my my vinyl community broadcast did. The first one recommended. I'd shown an Air album, and someone recommended me Starwalker, and it's an electro pop group. And J.B. Dunkel, who is from Air, is one of the members, along with Barty Johansson from Bang Gong.
Okay.
Yeah, you know that popular group Bang Gong. It's kind of fun to say though, and it's electro pop music. It's similar to Air but darker, I think.
Okay.
And a little moodier. It was just something totally different that I'd never heard of, and it was kind of fun to get. I brought in the best of Enya. Yeah, Enya's one of those where I used to have all her CDs, but you don't need them. You just want those hits. And I did not know, but Enya was the actual name of the group and not the person's name that was singing.
I guess I did not know that either.
I didn't. I'm reading this and go, whoa, Enya is what they named their group. There's 3 people in it. And so the group's called Enya. Just you never see the other two. They just keep hidden back there. So that was fairly interesting. And then the other one I'll talk about is Tanarwin put one out. And Tanarwin, for those of you who don't know, is an African blues. They're out of the Sahara Desert. And they've been putting out albums for at least 20 years. And it's probably the most well-known of the African blues. And so they just put out a new album. Amatasu, it's, like I'm saying it right. But Daniel Lanois is on it.
Huh.
He, and he plays the pedal steel guitar. So it's a good album. It's a little different because we've added in some different instrumentation. But the thing is with African blues, it's all about the groove, and they just get into a hypnotic trance as they're playing because they generally they'll play in a circle and they just create a trance. Great electric guitars and everything. I thought this one was a little more subdued than some of their other albums, but still most enjoyable.
So this trance that you talk about, it's almost like that the drone type style that you're very fond of as well, if you think of it like that.
It is. It very, very much so. Very much so like
Interesting.
That. So what about you?
Well, it was a busy week. I saw your wagon tracks.
Fantastic.
And I kind of sort of fell off of it when I was placing my orders for the store. I had noticed that this past week there was a reissue for the first, not really a reissue, but a reissue of the release, but the first time on vinyl, from They Might Be Giants, The Spine. I forget exactly when that came out. It's a little bit of an older one. I like They Might Be Giants. They're one of those groups that are best served in smaller doses because they do tend to have their stuff sound a lot alike, which we've had some discussions before on how that kind of gets old. But for They Might Be Giants, they're always fun.
Yeah.
I'd seen them live in concert pre-pandemic. in Detroit, and they played some old stuff, they played some new stuff, and it was just a great experience to see them. And I've been a fan of theirs dating all the way back to their first self-titled album with Don't Let's Start, because it's just such a great, fun, happy, uplifting song.
Mm-hmm.
So while I was ordering this copy of The Spine, a couple for the store and one for me, I went back through the catalog available from our distributors, and there was a few others on there that I had not gotten. They've got like 19 or 20 some odd albums out there, very prolific. And so I ordered a few. So I picked up some copies of Nanobots, Mink Car, Join Us, in addition to The Spine, to go into my They Might Be Giants collection. I'll get around to listening to them someday, but...
You know, when you have your video where you show new music coming up,
Yep.
and so I'm watching that, and I go, they might be Giants. They might be Giants. They might be Giants. Someone found the reissues of They Might Be Giants. I figured, okay, you had to throw those in your collection.
That someone was me.
Yes.
So it's like one for the store, one for me. One for the store, two for me. One for the store, three for me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a neat thing. I haven't gotten around to listening to some of them, and I'm vaguely familiar from streaming a little bit of it here and there, but I'll do a deep dive into that sometime, this summer when I'm working here in the store, and we'll have some fun with it, because they're not big movers in the store.
Yeah.
But they're always fun. If you check them out, you'll get a big kick out of them. So before we get to the subject at hand, and that subject at hand this week is inner sleeves, and one of the things we joked about, I do want to touch on something else. We try to be and we get a lot of compliments for being fun and having, just a good time talking about records, that I almost feel hesitant to bring kind of the downer side of this in, but it happens from time to time. And I had I'm having kind of an unpleasant experience right now with Discogs, and it's directly related to something that we talked about. I believe it was on the previous episode with Is the Price of Vinyl Coming Down? Mm-hmm. We talked about how the Discogs fee increase that we did that. It was another episode previously, is causing some sellers it necessitates some sellers to increase their prices to help cover the increase in Discogs fees. In fact, I believe I mentioned very specifically that Discogs sent out a note saying, hey, the fees are going up. You may just want to increase your prices to your customers to help cover that. Matter of factly, it's a given. Prices are going up everywhere. Yeah. But one of the things I mentioned very specifically was that Grateful Dead Live from Record Store Day. I mentioned I put that up on Discogs, and when I went to go in, there were prices that were well below what we were offering or what I had to pay for it cost-wise. But I put it up there, and I marked it up a little bit. So, for example, the list price in our store was $125 new on this Grateful Dead box set. I put it up on Discogs for $129 to help cover that little bit of the fee increase. Well, not expecting it to sell, which I don't know what I was thinking, it did for that price, even with all the other lower price ones, and I'm very, very thankful about that. But after it sold, when I went to go ship, I had to double check the address. Now, Discogs is fairly well self-contained. For those that are not familiar with how the selling process works, it can be a self-contained entity. When someone pays you for an album that they've ordered through you through Discogs, it goes through PayPal, the PayPal system, and that automatically goes into our PayPal account. Well, the Discogs address sometimes doesn't match the PayPal address, and so I sometimes will like to go in and double check that to make sure that I'm mailing this to the right person, because this particular one, the billing was for one name and the address was for another, so I had to go in and double check that. When I went into the PayPal account to double check that address, I noticed something funny. The Discogs fee increase obviously is there, but there was something and I need to find this very specifically, and I don't want to get too deep into this because this is still ongoing, but I found something in the PayPal receipt for that particular transaction that was listed as partner commission. Now that is Discogs, correct?
Yeah.
Well, on my Discogs order page, it shows very, very clearly that their fee for the sale of this $129 order was $11.61. Wow. Then they added on a 54-cent fee for the shipping. So they had tack on a fee for the shipping. So my total Discogs fee on the Discogs page was $12.15 for selling this item that I marked up for $4.
Yeah.
So I'm losing. But on my PayPal transaction, the partner commission was listed as $23.79.
Man.
More than, probably about double what Discogs said the fee was. Then on top of that, it's another $5.50 PayPal fee. So I called PayPal first. They're easy to get a hold of as a business. You can talk to somebody for support. They said they had no idea what that fee was other than the partner commission is Discogs. It actually labels it as Discogs as their partner, but they said that they have no idea why it would be different from what Discogs says. And PayPal went on to say that it is whatever they automatically put in from that partner side. So Discogs put that in. So unfortunately, contacting Discogs is a lot like trying to contact YouTube or Facebook. It's not possible.
Yes.
You throw in an email ticket and hope for the best. So that was several days ago. And, I'm not a math guy by any means, but I tried a few different angles to think, well, maybe they added the taxes in because Discogs, they'll add taxes in for the state of sale. But that didn't come out to the same price for the taxes where this one was shipping. So I have no idea why the Discogs transaction page says $11 or $12.15, and the PayPal says that Discogs charged me and took out $23.79. Now, in the end run, is this a big deal? I mean, it's not a lot of money, but I would really like to know what's going on with this.
Well, it cuts into profit margin. So if you don't know, I mean, then obviously you need, again, people will have to raise their prices up again more just to pay for all this extra.
Yep. And going back, I found that, and I only went back about 4 or 5 Discogs orders, and the past 4 or 5 I went to, the same thing. Another one that I'd sold for like 30 some odd dollars. PayPal said that the fee was twice what Discogs says it was. So something's going on. I'm going to figure that out, but it's been 2 or 3 days since I contacted Discogs, sent them a message. So I did something drastic yesterday, and I pulled our entire inventory off of Discogs. I don't sell a lot on Discogs, but I pulled everything off of our Discogs store until I know what's going on, because I can't be paying double to Discogs when I haven't marked my stuff up.
This reeks of Ticketmaster. It's hidden fees. Where's Joe Biden? Supposedly he got on them, and by God, you're going to show us the fees. But that sucks when you're trying to do something. Then ta-da, there's something more.
It was a surprise nonetheless. Now, the other side of this, which I find interesting to think about, is this is beginning to make me question the median prices that Discogs says that these sell for, simply because as a record store, I rely on Discogs to say, okay, this record is worth this much. I usually try to stick within the median range on Discogs to be fair.
Yeah.
But knowing that the way Discogs calculates those averages is based on their last 10 online sales. So if Discogs says that this particular record is worth X, but the sellers have to jack it up by $10, $15, $20 in some cases, does that accurately reflect the value of the record, knowing that the Discogs fees, including these mystery ones, are now tacked into that sale price, saying that it's worth that much more? Something to think about.
Well, Ed, then that could keep escalating. Like it just keep going and going. Well, now it's at this price, but they're doing this, and
it's a lose-lose on my part, because then I say, well, I knock this price up by $10, then their fee jacks up accordingly as well. I'll mark it up 20 to help cover that. Well, it knocks it up another bit.
Only Discogs wins.
Yeah, exactly, in that point. So I'm working this out with Discogs. I'll give you guys an update and you an update when I hear more and if I hear more. But in the meantime, I took that drastic action to pull. And I don't sell a lot on Discogs. I maybe had 100 items up there.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that that's a big, big part of our business, but it comes down to the principle of the thing. If you're going to charge me this much, tell me you're going to charge me this much and tell me what it's for.
Yep.
So,
wow.
Anyway, okay, sorry about that. Let's get on to other depressing news. The joke that I said that we talked about regarding inner sleeves. Do you remember when we talked about the MoFi controversy a few weeks back? How Mobile Fidelity just wasn't very forthcoming with whether or not there was digital.
Yeah.
I think we joked about at the beginning about the inner sleeves.
We did.
Well, it turns out there's not a joke. I saw a video this week from a channel. This one was in the UK. The name of the channel is The Audiophile Man. And just about a week ago, he did this very long video where he talked about MoFi inner sleeves, the original Master Sleeves in particular. And he pointed out that it's not quite what MoFi says. Well, it's actually the same damn thing as their analog versus digital. They're just not telling you.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, MoFi inner sleeves were the creme de la creme, so to speak, the ones you wanted to get to protect your records. Mm-hmm. As it turns out, it's not really rice paper in the MoFi Original Master Sleeves.
Was it wheat paper?
No, well,
some other grain.
I'm gonna make some noise here. We've got a package of the Original Master Sleeves right here. It's a 50-pack, the same kind that MoFi sells on their website. It's different from their all rice paper or archival sleeves. These are the Masters that have 2 sheets of the plastic. I forget the exact chemical compound, and then a sheet of paper in between. The back of the MoFi says, MoFi Original Master Sleeves help preserve your most prized recordings. These custom-designed inner sleeves protect against scratching, static buildup, and contamination, common problems associated with all types of regular sleeves. Your records are replaceable. The inner sleeves will help them last a lifetime. Now, that's very neat and very cool and straightforward to say, but I've always been under the impression that those were rice paper on those sleeves, and apparently they're not. On the MoFi history page, it talks about their rice paper sleeves. But when you go to the MoFi website, I'm looking at this right now for the industry standard vinyl protection and storage 3-ply anti-static designs for unparalleled quality. Their note says, these are the same high-quality inner sleeves we use for our vinyl releases. And again, this is on the MoFi website right now. They are imported. We'll get back to that in a second. 3-ply anti-static premium sleeves, parentheses, similar to rice paper. So here we are.
So what we're saying here, folks, is this whole controversy started on this podcast. We brought it up first. You heard it from us first that maybe there's something up with them. And now, see, everyone, the investigators have gone into it. So whatever we say, just remember, there's a lot of truth out there in it.
So this Audiophile Man channel on YouTube, he went into a deep dive, and this whole idea of the MoFi, and I really tried looking online to find out where are mobile fidelity sleeves made. And it doesn't say. It's not going to tell us they're imported from China. But this gentleman, as part of his experiment, bought a 7 or 8 different of the MoFi inner sleeve clones, so to speak, ones that are there. And he found that there are some tremendous similarities between these knockoffs, which are very, very plainly made in China, and the MoFi. Now, he's not saying, and we're not saying that these are made in China because I can't just tell, but it does say on the website that they are imported. So MoFi does not make them themselves. This channel also had gotten an email solicitation, which, we businesses tend to get them as well, offering your name printed on these inner sleeves that you can use. They're rice paper or whatever, and they looked remarkably similar. The blank ones that you could get looked remarkably similar to the original Master Sleeves from MoFi that he could just pay some money to this Chinese company to imprint his logo and name on.
I'm just kind of amazed that someone could make a long video and just keep going on something like that.
Who in the world would do that?
I got a little time on my hand. Let's get into this. But very interesting. Isn't that something?
The ultimate was he tested all of these other ones and said, really, they're pretty much the exact same. The paper's a little cheaper on the inside. Some are not. But ultimately, he said, if you're going to invest money to protect your vinyl with these original master type sleeves, if you want to pay more for the MoFi name, that's all you're getting is the MoFi name on them.
Will there be a lawsuit that we can get some more money?
I don't know. Wow. Another one.
MoFi-Gate Part 2. Get ready.
Will MoFi ever go from this? So, I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about inner sleeves. I see a lot of records come through the store, the used ones especially, with all forms of inner sleeves, whether they be paper, archival, or the mobile fidelity or plastic. Even some of the original ones, they got really weird. Columbia Records in the 60s actually used plastic on the inside, and those things would wrinkle up. The paper ones have been around forever, whether they be the rounded edges or printed inner sleeves. You have heavier cardboard. Where do you stand on, do you have a preference, and does it really matter to protect your records?
Yeah, I It's when we had talked about doing this topic, this has been something that I'd been thinking about for my channel, just to kind of talk about from a heretic's point of view. I had records for 40 years in a paper sleeve, and I would take them out, and they still look just as good as when I bought them. They're sitting there. They're great. I think, if it's an album that you're pulling in and out, in and out, in and out constantly, your chance of scratching it is going to go up. But how many collectors do that? We wind up buying so many albums that if we listen to that album once a year, we're doing pretty darn good. Now, I will take my most valuable records, and I will put them in a MoFi with a simulated rice sleeve, and I'll put it into that just because. But when I go record shopping and I'm looking at an album, I don't go, oh, it doesn't have a MoFi sleeve. Well, I'm not going to buy that. It has nothing to do with anything with my purchases of that. It's my decision to put that on there. But I know if I bring it in to sell to you or someone else, I'm not going to get like, well, we'll give you more money because that's a MoFi sleeve.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, seeing a lot of used ones come in varying conditions, paper sleeves, I think 9 times out of 10 are absolutely fine, especially if it's a record that's in the $2 to $5 to $10 range. You want something that's going to protect it from the cardboard or any imperfections that show up, as well as protecting it from the opening edge of the outer sleeve when you're putting it in and out, especially gatefolds or those unipacks that get a little weird. My big thing is that any kind of inner sleeve, no matter what type it has to be, should be free of wrinkles, because that's where the problem comes in. If you get a little fold, if that inner sleeve gets a little crinkled paper-wise, and especially those plastic sleeves, whether they be the original Masters, and I've seen some original Master sleeves that have come in that had a little tiny crease in them, and then if it sits pressed in the shelf fairly tightly for a few years, that crease is indented and or affixed to the vinyl, causing damage. So the key, I think, is not so much, and I know people will argue on this, the rice paper, archival, MoFi paper, the end result is if that inner sleeve is perfectly flat and free of wrinkles, it doesn't really matter. But I think the more valuable records, of course, need to be protected.
Yeah, I have it's up to everyone has an individual preference, and there are people out there in everything. As soon as they buy it, they put them into one of these fancy sleeves, and that's great. If you have the money and you want to do it, that's fine. I could do it, but that's then I can't buy as many record albums. Quite honestly, it really comes down to that: is it worth it in the long run? Is it going to make a difference? And I just look back from my record collection, from all the years that I've collected records, I've never had a problem with a paper sleeve and the album coming out. If you abuse it, you will. I mean, this problem comes with the people that leave them out sitting on top of a turntable. Yeah. I mean, cat pees on, whatever the case. That's the problem. But as a collector, you take care of it. And even if it's in paper sleeve, you put it carefully in there, and then it just sits there until whenever you wind up pulling it out again, a few years later.
Okay, you refer to it lovingly as the Octave collection that I brought in here to the store a little while ago. Mm-hmm. These were from a DJ, and he had owned a record store in the 80s. So almost every single one of these records, and I think I'm about 400 or 500 deep in a collection of about 1,200, almost every single one of these records has been placed into a poly inner sleeve, not an original master, but a straight up poly one. You've seen these clear ones that are similar to the outer sleeves, but they're a little more tight fitting. I'm finding that most of these records, having been untouched since the 80s, are actually somewhat adhered to the vinyl and the sleeve. And so I have to hold one edge of the sleeve and give it a quick tug to break that free. And in some cases, that does make an imprint on the vinyl. In others, it just breaks free and we clean it and it's fine. But I'm pitching all of those because plastic, poly, degrades. Or I know there's a difference. You Dow scientists, don't come down on me. I know there's a difference. Like styrofoam. Yes, that whatever that plastic material is degrades over time. It falls apart. Mm-hmm.
and and paper just turns brown.
It does. Well, especially if there's moisture. And that's one of the things I'd read with the original master sleeves and their faux rice paper or real rice paper or archival sleeves is the fact that whether or not that paper, whatever type it be, allows moisture to evaporate. I think that one of the things I'd read points to when people wash their records. Are they dry before you put them in there? Are they completely dry? Because even if there's a little moisture in the grooves and you pop it into a paper sleeve, that holds that moisture in, and that causes problems down the line. But it's the same thing with any plastic you'd put it into as well, especially plastic.
Yeah, and I think of, someone that's starting record collecting and they're watching, different videos, and they can really get caught up where everything needs to be one of these sleeves. They'll be watching a channel and, this is what you got to do. You have to do this, and here's why. And so suddenly they're buying, and they're buying a $5 record, and we're thrown into a MoFi sleeve because this is what I heard you have to do. And instead of maybe talk to some other people, is this worth doing? Because I've seen channels with that, with new collectors, and they feel this is the right way.
And it's not necessarily the case. The paper sleeves, and we buy the Bags Unlimited. That's really the most cost-effective one right now. I'm not a huge fan of Bags Unlimited, but that's kind of where we are in this. But the Bags Unlimited paper inner sleeves, we buy them in bulk because a lot of records come in with damaged inner sleeves or no inner sleeves. And before those used ones go out on the shelf, we put it in a new paper sleeve, just simply to offer that little bit of protection. But I'd go broke putting them into the original masters.
Yeah. No, and that's why I do have MoFi sleeves at home, but not that many. I mean, it's going to be a very valuable album, and I will put it in there just because. I thought, okay, maybe I'll give it that little bit of extra protection, but I'm really not worried. I don't sweat. I don't think about my other albums. God, is that going to be okay or not? No, I've been doing it for so many years. Never a problem.
And with the MoFi original masters and in some of the knockoffs, especially the ones that were in the video that I saw, the edges of that tend to be a little bit flimsy. And this is where I mentioned that you have to be careful putting them in. Even with these good, expensive inner sleeves, if you're not paying attention, you crinkle a corner or it folds over as that goes in. That's something that's going to continue to degrade your vinyl, especially if it's touching the vinyl down the line. So that's the care.
Yeah, I never thought about it. Now it makes me, wow, wonder what I got going on some of mine, because sometimes you're just in a hurry, shove it in there and away you go.
A lot of times too, especially with some records, there is an industry standard, by the way, there really is. I've read on this, and I actually was at a conference where they talked about it. An industry standard as for the size of the outer sleeve and the inner sleeve. But there are some that you'll notice that the inner sleeve will only go in the proper horizontal position with the opening up. You can't turn it sideways for easy access. And that's by design. That's up to the artist or the label, however they're designing that particular album. But in the cases where we're talking mere millimeters of a difference between, it's not completely square, that inner sleeve, if you try to force it in the way it's not supposed to go in, you're creating those wrinkles.
Yeah, I've created a lot of wrinkles, and I've always, I'll buy an album. I'm trying to turn it the other way so it's easy to take the album. I go, why won't this go in? This makes no sense to me. That album's working. What am I doing wrong? And you're looking in there. What's obstructing this? And just the boogers are out there. Hey, let's have some fun. We'll just make this a little bit different in size.
And it's usually the printed inner sleeves, the one with the liner notes and the lyrics and stuff. And that's fine. So if there is this new MoFi controversy, I don't want to say it's a controversy. They may or may not be made in China. I haven't been able to confirm whether they are or not. The knockoffs may or may not be the exact same quality as the MoFi inner sleeves. Where does that leave folks with options if you want to protect? I looked up a couple of these ones that this channel had talked about, and there is a company called MA Recordings where their inner sleeves are actually rice paper, and it's the real rice paper. If you ever go to those old Oriental restaurants where the walls are made of the rice paper, I think that this is what that is, and it's very durable. You can tug it; it won't rip as easily as a MoFi inner sleeve. So this is called MA Recordings inner sleeves, and it looks like they're around $30, $35 for a pack of 50. So it's a lot more expensive. One of the other ones I found that does tend to have a bigger following, and it's getting some really good reviews, is from a website called Big Fudge. But this falls into this, is it a MoFi knockoff coming from China as well? And I couldn't find any information on that. But the Big Fudge sleeves do say that they use actual rice paper in that same inner poly. It's that 3-ply where there's 2 pieces of the poly and 1 piece of paper to help, like the original Masters. But Big Fudge does say that it's rice paper and not rice paper-like.
Yeah.
And those come in at about $23 according to their website for a pack of 50. So that's right in line with the same price as the MoFi ones.
Man, $23. That's a whole record album. Well, it used to be a whole record album. Lord knows now. Don't go on Discogs. You get a 45 for that now. It's kind of, like when you think even with outer sleeves, there's so many types of outer sleeves.
Yep.
You have those ones that have that glue down. So when you open it, it's just, if I find somebody please uses those, it's like, ugh, or a video and it, some guys are doing,
Music on vinyl does that too. And what's so damned annoying about that is if you don't open it up all the way, as you're pulling the record out, it'll fall back and stick to the outer sleeve of the record. And you got to be real careful it doesn't pull up any of the print.
I'm not sure what the purpose of that is, to seal it in. It doesn't keep water out. So I don't quite understand, why. I'm sure it costs more. Maybe that's just to charge us.
It's extra plastic. So, of course it is. That's the same argument. People are going to say, we don't need any kind of plastic outer sleeves. And we've covered this before where I said, we had the furnace issue 20 some odd plus years ago where poly sleeves actually protected my album covers, and I'm happy for that. Mm-hmm. I use them personally. I don't go nuts about them. We found a place called Music Record Shop that actually makes our outer sleeves in the U.S., which I'm very happy about. And they're comparable in price to some of the ones that are imported. You can get 2 mil, which is really thin and flimsy. The 3 mil is the standard, and that's the millimeter, the thickness of the poly. And I've seen them upwards of 4 or 5. At that point, you're almost using like a laminate cover on there.
Sure.
So, have you ever seen these some picture discs, especially in the 80s? Came with this very, very heavy, and we talked that very heavy gauge clear plastic.
Yes.
Very rigid.
Uh-huh.
That is, I've read, very bad because that breaks down quicker, I guess, than regular poly. So the older picture sleeves that came in that heavy plastic, that's actually damaging them if you leave them in there.
Now there's newer ones that you can they're still coming out that way. I would guess that plastic's a little bit better, or is it still something
I think it's still the same.
out?
I think it's still the same thing. If you buy new picture discs and they're not in a cardboard sleeve, some of them are coming in regular cardboard sleeves with the die cut on the front. But some of them are just, especially the record store day ones I've seen, like the Dio, it's just the picture sleeve in heavy plastic. Get it out of there and put it in a paper sleeve. If you want to look at it, put it in an archival sleeve or something like that.
And here, occasionally, as we're talking with MoFi, do you need to put everything into a MoFi sleeve or something similar to that? When it comes to the outer sleeves, you do. To me, if it's a $3, $2 album, just put it in there. That actually will provide you protection.
Especially, too, depending on how you shelve it or whether you put them in crates and how tightly you pack it. At the very least, that protects from ring wear.
Yes. And I know we talked about this before, it was just, I believe Shakespeare once said, shrink wrap or no shrink wrap? That is the question. I may have paraphrased that a little bit, but, Shakespeare was ahead of his time.
Yep.
And that's, we talked about that. The whole controversy is, oh my God, that has to come off. And I've always been of the thing where, I've had it on albums for many, many years. And guess what? I had no ring wear and I had no issues and it was fine. Maybe I'm just lucky. It's also how you store things. There's a variety of other issues.
Other factors that come into that.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb when an album comes in to the store and it's got shrink wrap on it before it goes out on the shelf is whether or not the shrink wrap has a hype sticker on there. If there's an original hype sticker still on there, we leave it on. If not, then that shrink wrap comes off because, again, it depends. Is the shrink wrap moved over time? Is it shrinking?
Yes,
and
that's
tightening?
important.
Is it tightening up on the outer sleeve, which could do some damage in and of itself?
Yeah, I will always pull that off. You look for that. You can tell when it starts to tighten up. But otherwise, I don't have issues with it unless it's when you have to open up. And those, especially you buy those ones, Kmart, $3.99. It's just like, Isn't that just fun? It's just one of those little extra things that only a record collector, you show it to your wife. Look at that, Kmart $3.99. They go, so what?
I only paid $3.99 for it. Wait a minute, Kmart's are all closed.
Yeah.
Where did you get this?
It's a great way to justify a collection. Maybe someone needs to print a bunch of those that you could just throw them on before you at the record store. Here you go. Put those on. No one will ever know.
No one will know. Well, this has been interesting. Aside from whether or not we instituted another MoFi scandal with is it rice paper or is it not? I think we joked about it being recycled back at that point. I had no clue, and then that popped up in my YouTube feed earlier this week where this Brit was going, yeah, it's not really. These are made in China, maybe, and it's not really rice paper, maybe. And holy cow, it's tough to keep track of some of these sometimes. But what do you do?
Yeah, all you can do is don't worry too much about it. Buy your records, enjoy your records, and you know what? Life is good.
There it is. You want paper sleeves? Use paper sleeves. Yeah. You want original master sleeves? Use original master. Do what you want. Do what makes you feel good within the law. And do not write on your record covers or labels.
Yeah, I just bought one with that.
All right, Steve. Well, thank you. And thank you all for listening to two guys talking about records. Actually, it's two guys bitching about record stuff today, wasn't it?
That's right.
I really don't like doing that, but hey.
But once again, we did open up a whole new controversy. I'm just going to say it began here. So fantastic.
There you go. We're happy. This is our little corner of the internet world. We're trendsetters. What do we want to joke about next?
Yes. We'll figure it out.
All right. You folks have a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks again. This has been Jim, a record store owner.
And Steve, a record collector.
Have a great one, folks.